Well, this might annoy a few of you. So I think for the most part, it's pretty clear to everybody that I kind of like to talk about whatever it is that's on my mind and I feel like talking about. And if it potentially upsets a sizable portion of the people that listen to my channel on the regular, well, that's kind of just gonna happen naturally, I think. It's part of the fun of speaking your mind and being yourself. Now, I will say that despite the fact that my title is fairly positive about something Nintendo related for the first time in a while, I wouldn't get my hopes up too high because there are a lot of things about this that I am pretty critical about. But I think I'm going to try to shift my talking points back and forth a little bit. Starting off with something very obvious. I think this game looks awesome. I think it is right up my alley for the type of game that I like. It seems like it's taken inspiration from both Mario Odyssey and Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, mixed with a hint of Wreck-It Ralph for some reason. And in just watching the trailer, I know that this is going to be a game that if I were to play, whenever that may be, it's going to be a game that I will consider the best of the best. Right on the surface, I can tell already, just by seeing that trailer, it's going to be a game that I wholeheartedly appreciate. Now, is it worth it for me to go out and buy a Nintendo Switch 2 only so that I can make sure I play this game? No, not yet. More reasonably, whenever I do pick up a Nintendo Switch 2, used realistically speaking, and probably closer to the end of the year unless I can find one on a crazy deal, at that point I would still not even buy the game new. I would go out of my way to probably rent it from the library or something just so I can get my hands on it for a week. But I'm not gonna go out of my way to be like, oh my god, I have to get to Switch 2 so I can play this game next month. But in fairness, that's also the type of person that I was prior to this whole boycott situation. I'm very big about not buying games immediately and playing them when they first come out. I'll make exceptions every now and then, and I assume that if I wasn't boycotting and had a Switch 2, I probably would have bought this game close to the launch at least. But normally that's not my style. Now, I think this game is going to do very well as far as sales are concerned because it is effectively going to be the first Switch 2 game that everybody bought their Switch for. I don't think people are suddenly going to be like, oh my god, I have to buy a Switch 2 for Donkey Kong Bonanza, because I imagine that most people that already bought a Switch 2 have this game in their mind. So if they bought the Switch 2, they were thinking, I want to play this game eventually, or they bought the Switch 2 and were like, I'm not really interested in Donkey Kong, I'm going to skip this one over. This game is close enough to launch where realistically it's already moved the systems that it's going to move. Now, I'll be completely honest, I don't feel like this is actually a Donkey Kong game. It's not just Donkey Kong's appearance, but the vibe, the feel that I get when watching the gameplay on this thing does not give me the same vibes of the Rare Donkey Kong nor the Retro Studios Donkey Kong. But I've already kind of accepted that was the reality. I've been saying it for a while now that I don't feel like it's the same Donkey Kong anymore. And that kind of started becoming clear to me around the time of the Mario movie, but in general, Donkey Kong has had less and less focus over time. Now it seems more like the Disneyfication of Donkey Kong. Like it actually looks like Wreck-It Ralph, especially with Pauline in this title. It seems like they're going for more of a type of heartfelt story, and I imagine that will roll into like some kind of Donkey Kong movie with him and Pauline eventually. You know, they got their Donkey Kong area of the theme parks now. It just really feels Disney is what I'm seeing here. Even the way that she's singing in the beginning of the trailer feels like one of the Disney princesses just kind of walking around and singing to herself. But I will say, once again, that wouldn't bother me from a gameplay perspective, because when I look at this game, it looks like a fun Nintendo charm-filled game. And in general, I'm the type of person that's very forgiving and very lenient on this kind of continuity. You know, like when Mario shifts from a collectathon to a linear platformer, or Zelda goes from a linear story to a complete open world thing, a lot of people go up in arms and lose their minds. I'm kind of just like, oh yeah, this is a fun game, let me just play more. And I feel the same way here. I don't feel like it has to be rare. I don't feel like the Kremlings have to be there and K. Rool has to show up. I didn't feel that way when it was in Tropical Freeze and Returns. All I care about is if I pick up the controller, there's a ton to collect, some damage to be done, and fun to be had, and it looks like this game is going to be providing that. I also love that they completely disregard all sense of continuity, unless of course there's some kind of time travel mechanic involved. This completely screws up with all of the hardcore fans who have like their little timelines of which Donkey Kong is who and Cranky Kong is what and all that stuff. And the reason I love that is because through all of my life, I've seen various different Nintendo IPs have stories just kind of make up what they want on the spot and retcon billions of different things. And I remember the same thing would happen through every release of every Sonic game, and everyone's just like making these charts and these timelines and feeling like they're super intellectual about it. And it's always cracked me up because it's very clear that the developers don't really care. They're just trying to make a game that's fun for people. And there's this weird over-obsession with continuity for these games that are not meant to be considered continuous. Not under this much scrutiny, at least. So in the same way that I thought it was hilarious when everybody started losing their minds because Donkey Kong didn't look like how he used to look a year ago, I think it's hilarious that there's going to be a bunch of people crossing their arms and stomping on the floor because they're like, oh, Pauline is no longer Cranky Kong's friend. Like, chill. It's a Nintendo game. It's not that serious. Now, some of the stuff on here look really fun. Like, the environments are interesting and dynamic. The different transformations that Donkey Kong's going to be able to do all look like they're interesting. The flying around in the sky and dropping the eggshells with the ostrich, blasting your way through a hill, coming out on the other side. Everything they showed just looks really fun. This looks like it's going to be the kind of collectathon that's just going to take up a lot of people's times, and I genuinely think it should have been a launch title. I think it would have done great. The reality is, though, I think everybody would have purchased Mario Kart as soon as that game came out. I don't think every single person is going to be purchasing Donkey Kong, however. So if you started off with Donkey Kong and then eventually Mario Kart came out, you know everybody's going to buy Mario Kart. You can't guarantee now everybody's going to be buying Donkey Kong. And that's not me blasting Donkey Kong, that's just me praising Mario Kart for what it is. Everyone's gonna buy it if they have a Nintendo console, especially when it comes out. Like, Mario Kart 8 sold more than Zelda and Mario. So realistically speaking, Mario Kart World would have sold more than Donkey Kong. So if Donkey Kong was the launch title, people would have gone to Switch and be like, what's the Switch 2 launch title? Oh, okay, Donkey Kong. Aside from that, this looks like the kind of game that a Nintendo fan would consider Game of the Year. Like, it's the kind of game I would consider Game of the Year. And I would realistically play it, say it was the best game of all time, just like I did with Mario Odyssey, for example. And I would be arguing to everybody else that they don't understand good games if they don't think this is the best game in the world, and that clearly there's a bias against Nintendo if it doesn't win Game of the Year. Like, it's that kind of game. But, you know, when you're talking about Game of the Year, it's not just about Nintendo. There are franchises across the big three consoles as well as PC, and they have games coming out all over the place, so it's a little bit more difficult. But seeing as how this year there's not that big of a lineup, like what's in the running right now, Clear Obscure 33 is realistically in the discussion. And since this game is inevitably going to get a ton of sales because it's the first Switch 2 game that's coming out since the launch, it'll realistically be up there in the conversation as well, but I think in most years this would be the kind of game where Nintendo fans would significantly raise it up. It would probably get nominated for Game of the Year, but wouldn't necessarily win it. And I say that because there's a lot about this game, at least on the surface, based off of these initial impressions with these early directs, that looks like it would be underwhelming for most of the gaming world outside of Nintendo fans. Like, to me, the world looks fun and explorable, but to others, they just see what should have been released in 2020. Like, there's nothing about this title visually that would wow people. Not what you would expect on a $450 next-gen console. There were frame drops during the footage shown in the Direct. Many people that went and got hands-on with this game noticed a lot of frame drops, specifically when you were busting a lot of the terrain. And there are many people mentioning that they noticed frame drops in this trailer during this Direct as well. Now, for me, I don't see this crap because I see Nintendo and it's fun game. Just like I didn't see frame drops with Tears of the Kingdom because I don't pay attention, or I guess I don't notice this stuff, I should say. And even when I do notice it, I'm just like, oh yeah, it looked like that slowed down a bit there. There must be a lot going on, and I just continue on with my life. But I think those are the type of things where other people looking into this game are going to feel like it's not really delivering at Game of the Year quality. And I think likewise, many people watching the trailer are going to be put off because the game can look kind of bland in many ways. Like looking at these shots of the overworld and the giant map and just the way it's pans over while Donkey Kong's running around, it feels generic compared to a lot of the stuff that we've seen over the past 7-8 years. And people had those same criticisms over Mario Kart World, so I imagine they're going to have the same type of criticism here because the terrain in both of these games and the different environments, while yeah, they look nice if you're a Nintendo fan, non-Nintendo fans will look at it and be like, this seems kind of empty and bland. There's a weird glaze over a lot of the textures in this game, and things look very soft. I can't explain it. Almost cartoony, but not in a good way. And like I said, I'll play the game and I'll completely ignore that and I'll have a ton of fun with something like that, but other people will notice it and be like, this looks like a crappy Nintendo title. And honestly, at the end of the day, that's kind of what this feels like. It feels Nintendo, the same way the Switch 2 feels Nintendo. Everything about the Switch 2 gives Nintendo vibes, except for this fallacy that it's like amazing high-end next-gen hardware and things are being priced as such. But no, this is gonna be a game that doesn't look as good as other games that come out on other consoles this generation. It's gonna have performance issues, and despite that, Nintendo fans are gonna play it and they're going to love it because it is going to be a very fun game, while non-Nintendo fans are going to have their same complaints that they've always had, even though many of those non-Nintendo fans own a Switch. And now realistically a Switch too, because somebody had to buy it when all the Nintendo fans didn't. But yeah, overall, I mean, my favorite 3 games from the Switch were probably Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom. So seeing a game that looks like it's taken inspiration from all 3 of those works perfectly for me. And I'm guessing most Nintendo fans feel the same way I do while looking at it, just without all of the background noise due to the anti-customer stuff that Nintendo's been pulling off that's in my head. Although realistically speaking, there's also a massive subset of Nintendo fans that are just going to be extremely mad that this doesn't look like their Donkey Kong that they grew up with, and the whole lack of continuity thing, and the fact that Pauline looks like she belongs in a movie more than she does in a Donkey Kong game. But yeah, rest assured, if you're a Nintendo fan, I'm with you. I think this is going to be phenomenal, and I think it will very likely be my game of the year if I end up playing it. I just don't know that many people are going to feel the same way about it. But we will have to wait and see. Oh, also, the Gameshare feature sucks, and it's embarrassing that people are praising it. Yeah, I totally forgot. This was actually the thing I wanted to start the video off, unsurprisingly, because I hate the Gameshare feature on the Switch too. So I've already made like 2 videos on this, but this is yet another realistically single-player game that they're adding the Gameshare feature to, where they should have been adding it to games like Mario Kart that actually need it. Or like Mario Party, for example, where they made it only local, and even then they limited the amount of minigames that you can play it on. But no, instead they're doing this Gameshare thing where it's either you gotta be sitting right next to the person that you're playing with, and at that point you might as well just play on the same Switch because the latency is gonna be awful. Or if you're gonna play online, why are you playing online so that the other person can just point and click and basically use Cappy, which is all Pauline is in this game. And I realize for many of you, you would have viewed this and been like, why is Nintendo complaining? Gameshare is a great feature and you get to try out these games, and people are so bad now because they just want games for free. But that's because most of you never realized that Nintendo used to allow us to actually game share, where I could play a game and somebody on another Switch could also play the game, and we can play online at the same time together. That's what we gave up for this. So unless they start letting people play Mario Kart together over the internet with a single cartridge, this is really not even remotely an interesting feature. And I swear the people that are praising it gotta be fake humans. Like, I can't imagine it's not somebody hired by Nintendo going out there and being like, hey look, you can play Donkey Kong Bonanza on a Switch 1 if you game share with your friend. It's like, no, you can use your Switch 1 to basically be the pointer cursor that you were in Mario Galaxy 2. That's not game sharing. If they start using it for actual multiplayer Mario games like Mario Party, Mario Kart, Smash, Tennis, Strikers, then maybe we can talk. But in the meantime, no, this is not an appealing feature at all. It's disgusting and insulting, and I'm surprised how many people are so happy with it, despite the fact that they don't even use GameShare, and they're realistically never going to use this either. And I know that because it's all of the same people that completely shrugged off the fact that we all spent 4 years with Nintendo telling us how to play the same game with our friend at the same time with a single digital copy, and now all of a sudden they're trying to push this lame excuse for GameShare as like an excellent feature. Okay, yeah, sorry. Now I'm done. I still think this game's going to be good, but yeah. Now, something completely unrelated to Donkey Kong Bonanza, but today I was actually out and about and I passed by a used game store that is close to my house that I haven't had a chance to visit yet. So I decided to pop in because I wanted to ask them how much they would buy my Switch for, since I got the Switch OLEDs coming in a couple of days. They obviously were not offering nearly enough, and I'd rather just sell it online at this point. But this was one of the best used game stores I had walked into in a very long time. I didn't buy anything yet because I was in a little bit of a hurry, but I ended up going through every single row of games that they have. Their prices are really fairly priced. Even their first party Switch 1 titles are not marked up like you would normally see in one of these used stores. Like, they had Breath of the Wild for like 30 or 35 bucks, I think. I was trying to see if they had a copy of Conker's Live and Reloaded because I wanted that for my Xbox, but they didn't have that, unfortunately. But they had a bunch of used consoles for sale. Everything's wrapped up with a controller ready to go, and it was just like nice to walk in there and just look around. It actually weirdly put me in a happy mood because it kind of gave me like this nostalgia feeling for going to rental stores and used game stores that used to actually have a large variety of stuff to pick from. And you know, I didn't buy anything because I already have a giant retro library at home, but it made me come home and throw on my Nintendo 64 and play Diddy Kong Racing for an hour. And I think after I'm done this video, I might actually play a little bit of Donkey Kong 64. It just feels like the occasion calls for it. Also, for once, I was able to use a Donkey Kong soundtrack as the background noise for one of my videos, and it's relevant, so yeah. Okay, that's enough yapping out of me for one night. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you on the next one.